The topic of theoretical training today is Anupreksha and Bhavana, which we translate as therapeutic thinking and contemplation. Preksha and Anupreksha go together. In Preksha, what we do is to concentrate our mind or attention totally on perception, pure perception. So, Preksha is perceptive meditation. In Anupreksha, we concentrate our mind on thinking, on reflecting. Of course, here the concentration should be profound and should be limited only to a single theme or idea. Then it becomes Anupreksha. So in this way, you have to first understand the difference between Preksha and Anupreksha. You know, concentration is necessary in both the exercises. Unless there is concentration of our consciousness, of our mind, of our attention, we cannot practice either Preksha or Anupreksha. So concentration is the first necessary condition to practice Anupreksha. Second thing is, in Preksha, we try to avoid thinking, reflecting or deliberating or contemplating on any idea. We try to become free from all thoughts, all reactions, all memories, all imaginations. We try to keep our mind silent. So in a way, Preksha is perceptive meditation in which we occupy ourselves in pure perception without thinking. That is Preksha. In Anupreksha, we use our faculty which we possess naturally, the faculty of thinking, of utilizing our mind, of the thoughts and ideas which are very useful. So we utilize this capacity and concentrate on it during our practice of Anupreksha. Now I think it is very clear. Now we go to the second point, that in Anupreksha, what is the purpose of Anupreksha? You know, philosophically, many people have the knowledge about reality and truth through the scriptures, through the books, by hearing from the great philosophers. We come to know about the reality, about the truths of life and so on. But the misery is that whatever we know through this knowledge, that is the knowledge, verbal knowledge or bookish knowledge, whatever we call it, that knowledge remains confined only to our brain. For example, all of us know that life is transitory. Transitoriness is the nature of life. It is the truth of life. Nobody can deny it. We all know all the associations with the external world, the external objects, other people, other men, the kith and kins, all relations are but transitory. They cannot last forever. When death occurs, a person becomes completely separate from whatever he was linked with. All linkings have got a short time, a short period, and therefore nothing is immortal in worldly relations. This is a truth which is very obvious, which is even known by a child. He knows it. A child very well knows that all relations are transitory. And the grown-up man knows it well because he has experiences that all relations are transitory. Still, the delusion occurs and person forgets all about the truth in spite of the knowledge that all relations are transitory. He again has an attachment for the things, for the people, for the worldly things, worldly objects and cravings and desires, and all things occur and a very deep, profound delusion is created. He cannot give it up. On the contrary, the idea of transitoriness, which is a truth, is obliterated, forgotten, and in that place we transplant the idea that everything is permanent, everything is everlasting. Whoever I am or whatever I possess, I will remain the same, the things will remain mine forever. This kind of wrong idea, rather the perverted belief, the perverted faith occurs in our mind and we cling to it. We cling to the things, we cling to the people around us and we think that we are going to live together forever and ever. Sometime something occurs, a thing is lost, a relative is lost, and we start crying. We start lamenting, we start mourning. Why? Did not we know that everything was actually transitory? Of course we had the knowledge, but that knowledge does not help us. In spite of the knowledge, our perverted belief that everything is mine, everything will remain mine forever. This perverted belief has so much profound effect on our mind that we start lamenting, we start cursing even God and ask Him why He has taken my beloved from me, and all these things happen. So it is very, very important to understand that unless we become free from such ignorances, rather perversions of idea, we cannot realize the truth exactly, and we cannot make ourselves happy in this life of transitoriness. In the same way, there are so many truths which we call as spiritual truths, universal truths, very, very clear and obvious truths. We are really truths. The soul is solitary. We know, all of us know. When it is bored, it comes alone. When it passes away, it goes alone. Nobody accompanies nobody. Still, we think that everybody is mine. I belong to all. This mindness, this kind of mamatva, this kind of possessiveness is ingrained in our sanskar, in our instincts, in our thoughts and ideas, and in our behavior and in our actions. We have to remove all this untruth, all this falsehood, all these perversions. So you can understand how can we grasp this truth from the inner mind, from the subconscious mind. Unless it penetrates our subconscious mind, the idea of truth, the real fact, unless it goes well within it, the external effects are so powerful, and mainly the effect of our own delusion, the effect of deluding karma, that is Mohaniya karma. The effect is so powerful that within a second we get lost sight of the truth and we cling to the untruth and perversion. So it is very clear that to live a life of truth, to understand the truth every moment, to experience the truth every moment in life, we have to practice this kind of thinking, the therapeutic thinking, the concentrated, profound thinking on truth. And as a result of this, we can create that right sanskar, that right belief, that right idea in our mind, which cannot be forgotten then. It will remain there forever. In spite of living the worldly life, this will not go into oblivion. We shall not lose sight of these facts. And this is what is required not only for a spiritual practitioner who has to live the life of truth, who has to remember always these facts, these hard facts of life. He must remember. And also for leading a successful life, a successful worldly life, a successful social life, a successful family life, he has to remember all these facts in his mind. His behavior will change. You know, we find people that for the sake of attachment to the objects, for the sake of attachment to the money, they become so selfish and they forget all relations. If they knew that these things, this money, these objects, this property, all this is transitory, not going to remain forever, then he will not become that much selfish for that. He will know that after all, everything is to be discarded, then why should I become selfish? And he becomes a person who lives a life of altruism, who lives the life of sacrifice, and he does not mind even sacrificing himself for other people's welfare and bliss. So this is the way how we can adopt spiritual philosophy in living a worldly life, in living our pragmatic life. Second thing is, we know that all the great discoveries, either of science or of philosophy or of any field, that occur only when the mind is completely free from all other exclusions, exclusively free from all other disturbances and perturbances. Be free. Then and then only one can penetrate into the truth and discover it. For this state of mind, a regular practice of this kind of meditation, that is anupreksha and bhavana, contemplation, are very necessary. And I think that in the world, whatever great discoveries have been made by scientists and philosophers, that were made only in the moments when their minds were completely free from all other distractions. In order to concentrate fully on a single thing, we have to practice every time, every day, this kind of exercise and prepare our mind for becoming concentrated on a single theme and idea. And in this way, we can make ourselves ready for doing such great inventions and discoveries.